Hello again everyone, it's me Matt, and thank you for joining me today. Helicopters of the Russian Armed Forces. Of course, a lot of controversy and discussion about Russian military equipment now today. As you know, I cannot talk about Ukrainian conflict or any kind of conflict that is going on in the Russian/Ukrainian war, but hey, here we are talking about a Russian helicopter, and as you know with my channel, I like to discuss equipment just in a broad aspect of things and how they operate, the features and the capabilities they have. But one thing that has been, I hate to say it, triggering me lately, and I hate to use that word because it's just awful. It's kind of ironic that I'm triggered by the word trigger. But the thing that's been coming across a lot recently when looking at some of the content and, footage from the Ukrainian conflict is people's opinion on this wonderful helicopter, the Mi-8 or Mi-17, the improved version or variant from the Russian Army's aviation combat fleet. These are some of the most incredible helicopters you will ever find in the world, and they get a really bad rep. Why do they get a really bad rep? And that's why we're going to talk about this today. And I think I need to stand up for the Mi-8. I need to put my, put my guard up a little bit for this wonderful aircraft, because not only does it serve in certain nations that people may not enjoy, it serves in nations across the globe doing not just conflict, but also supporting humanitarian aid. And a lot of people have, in the comments of seeing some of the combat footage of the Mi-8, discredited it and said, oh, it's an awful aircraft. Look at it, easily shot out the sky. It's slow, it's laggy, it's got very little capability to defend itself, and this is all just wrong. And I know there's many of you out there that obviously agree with me and discredit the violent attacks towards this aircraft, seeing some of the footage of them being, engaged with man-pads and shot out of the sky, etc. The reality is that, you can't put the basis of one aircraft and its operation in one combat zone to be the be-all and end-all of all opinion and its actual service history across its flight in aviation. It's done what it needs to do for a long time, and it's still doing what it needs to do pretty damn well. Now, the Mi-8 is very rugged, very, very dependable, and is in widespread use across the world. It's one of the most prolific utility helicopters ever built, with over 7,300 examples manufactured since 1961. There's not a huge amount of aircraft out there that really running at the 1961 level. A few, for sure, but certainly not in the capacity of which the Mi-8/Mi-17 is. It's combat proven. Truly a combat proven aircraft. This helicopter has done way more than it's been asked of across the world, whether it be, flying in Afghanistan or flying into, war zones that have more sort of the guerrilla nature, jungles, etc., etc. And they've really done about 70 different countries' worth of diligence of combat aviation for helicopters in their service. The most widely built version, of course, is the Mi-8 or the HIP-C, and the standard utility transport version is this kind. The Mi-8TB or HIP-E is the armed derivative, which packs a very heavy punch, armed with lots of different weapons such as bombs, rockets, missiles, you name it, this thing will carry it. As long as you're able to fly and use it efficiently, it's very, very deadly. Just like anything that is covered in missiles, rockets, and machine guns from the sky, if you have a very good pilot and they've trained well, this can do a huge amount of damage. Now, to improve performance, the Mi-8 was re-engined with the 1,874 shaft horsepower TV3 117MT engine to produce the Mi-17, which is the NATO designation of the HIP-H. This variant was introduced in 1975, so still a pretty old aircraft, but doing what it needs to do. Export customers often use the civil Mi-17 designation, but the CIS Air Forces use the Mi-8MT designation. HIP-H helicopters in CIS service are often fitted with extra cockpit armor, IR jammers, and a lot of chaff and flare dispensers. This beast is a chunky little monkey when it flies through the sky. It's not incredibly fast, it's not designed to be, it is technically a transport helicopter, so they wanted to give it lots of power to be able to carry that cargo, but additionally it's able to carry a lot of defense inside of it, whether it be, as I said, the jammers, the chaff, and the flare dispensers. And I actually know a pilot who flies one of these aircraft. He messaged me via email and wanted me to talk about it. And, he also we had some back and forth conversations and emails about, what we thought about the Ukrainian conflict, because, I do get to have some personalized conversations with people about the war. And he was also feeling really disheartened hearing about all these people that were saying that the Mi-8 is a useless aircraft, the Mi-17, Mi-8, it shouldn't be used in combat, it's old, it's decrepit, blah, 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 and it's just really not the case. A lot of people people are really placing its capabilities to the nature of which it's being used. We see these low-flying, high-speed, man-pad-centric engagements where, of course, it's not going to survive. Any helicopter engaged with man-pads at such low altitudes, with such open terrain, with pilots that have limited experience, or limited experience anyway with dealing with man-pads, it's a recipe for disaster. But for what it's been designed to do, it does it very well. Carrying huge amounts of weight, up to 24 fully equipped troops, with a crew of 3, including the pilot, co-pilot, and the flight engineer. It can defend itself pretty well too, with the side gunners or the plethora of missiles and rockets that house on board of it, very, very well. Now, the Mi-17 has given the rise to the bewildering range of different versions that are out there. It's literally like the Frankenstein of helicopters. You can do just about anything with this thing, including, from what I've been told, there's actually a propaganda Mi-8 that North Korea has produced, which basically is completely covered in speakers and megaphones that just blasts out whatever propaganda needs to be produced at any one time. I would love to have one of them here in Canada. I would definitely have some interesting uses for it, for sure. I'm sorry, I just think it would be fantastic. I'd plug in some, like, I don't know, some AC/DC and just start rocking around my local city with, like, this thing blaring out music. No one can stop me. The police can't even capture. Maybe they use man pads on me to take me out of the sky, but it'd be pretty cool. I mean, I can't imagine the volume or the sound that would come off a system like that. A propaganda helicopter, really, really cool. But there is literally a ton of different variants, whether it be communications and intelligence, command posts, command relays, basically a helicopter that's just filled with radios that just is a relay point between one communication station and another. It basically just flies, holds in position in hover or lands somewhere, and then flies off again to reconnect long-distance radios, which I've never actually heard of before. I've never heard of radio link helicopters that create long-distance radio communications by flying, landing, setting up a hub, moving to the next place. It's kind of cool, and maybe I'm just crazy that I've never heard of that before, but to pump an aircraft as full of radios being only a command post as a signal unit, that's not something I'm used to hearing about. There's also a refuel variant that basically just packs the back end full of fuel. They can have mid-air refueling, but this aircraft isn't super stable, from what I've been told, in terms of the way it can do mid-air refueling, because of the way in which, or the nature on which, the aircraft is very sort of lopsided to the front. Trying to do refueling with this thing is a little difficult at high speeds with aircraft trying to refuel at the same time. I've never seen any footage or have any imagery that I can find of one doing air refueling, but it can. There's also been a number of VIP transports from this aircraft. Of course, the Russian Ministry of Defense have used the Mi-8 in the past for transporting vital political members, should we say. There's also mine laying and mine clearing, so they actually have a system where the back deck of this thing flies open, they pull out a couple of trays and just pop mines all over the place. From what I had been told, and I don't know if this is true or not, the Mi-8s were actually used in the Falkland Islands to drop mines. I'm not entirely sure about that. I couldn't validate that if that is true or not, but I do know, being in the Falkland Islands, they did do a lot of mine throwing out of aircraft. Whether it was the Mi-8 or Mi-17, I'd be very surprised. There's been a huge amount of combat experience with this aircraft, though. Chechnya has really led to the development of its night attack capability. There was a lot of engagements where this aircraft needed to be, sufficient in night flying and terrible weather condition capabilities, and it did so very well. They did a number of upgrades. It's equipped with night vision systems that are compatible for the cockpit. Not super effective, not super efficient. They're forward-looking infrared and laser rangefinders that are in there too. It has produced a shore-based Mi-8 derivative, which is the Mi-14 Haze, for a variety of naval roles, including anti-submarine warfare, search and rescue, and mine countermeasures. The most significant current operator, though, of course, is the Russian naval aviation. Yes, primarily, the Russian Navy is using the Mi-14 Haze. They use it to a great extent for their fleets, and it doesn't seem like they're going to go out of fashion, so to speak, for quite some time or be replaced. And I think we can see that across the board. These helicopters aren't going anywhere. There's not a huge replacement for the majority of nations that are using them. That's a testament to their capabilities. We are seeing some of the newer helicopters coming out in the Western world now to replace their older fleets, but the Mi-8, Mi-17 continues to be satisfactory in what it needs to do. I must admit, it was a little heartbreaking seeing a lot of equipment being left behind in Afghanistan. We saw the pullout. You see a number of these helicopters that just sort of been, gutted to pieces or actually crashed, which was also kind of scary to see, including those Blackhawks. I don't know if you saw that footage, but it's been very, very well received across the world, and I personally believe it is still to this day a very viable transport helicopter, potentially even an attack helicopter, and I really don't feel that it's necessary to belittle an aircraft of this kind. Regardless of what you feel about those who are flying it, the nations that are supporting it, the equipment itself is sound and robust and is able to withstand what's been thrown at it since the 60s and still to this day. And as I said, many nations that are still using it haven't really looked at many big replacements for it because it does exactly what it needs to do. The Mill helicopter plant designated the new Mi-38, which is a proposed replacement, though, for the aging Mi-8 and Mi-17 helicopters. It made its maiden flight in 2003 and is currently running with production stages, and the Mi-38 is marketed for both military and civilian applications. So they are trying to replace them across the Russian Federation, but of course around the world, a little bit more difficult because, you know, there's such a huge amount of spares and parts and maintenance capabilities from having such a large fleet. It's a lot easier to just, you know, take up the scraps from other countries' aircraft. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please leave me a comment and let me know what you think about the incredible aircraft. Of course, if you did enjoy, please click the bell by the subscribe button. And, of course, also go check out my link description box below for my clothing sponsorship brand Attire for Effect, my Patreon, and all my other social media links. Thank you so much for supporting me if you do, and have a wonderful day. All the best. Bye-bye.